Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It's such a thrill to have you here. Beautiful just celebrated its 4th anniversary on Broadway. Chilina, you've been with the show for 3 years, and we're involved in early versions of the show. Did you do an early reading, or you just auditioned for it originally? I know that it was on your radar real early.
It was on my radar, and it's a really, really long story, but just suffice it to say that, I was really thrilled to get the opportunity to actually come to Broadway and do it, because it had been such a long road. And when I did my final audition for the show, I was almost 9 months pregnant. So that was a really fun. It was probably one of the most fun auditions I've ever done, because I was out to here and everyone was like, "What are you doing? You can't even fly." And I was like, "No, it's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it."
And you did fly to New York.
I flew, and I went into labor immediately after I came home from the audition, even though it was early. And I was like, "God, what's going on?" I was walking down the street and I started having contractions, and I just thought it was like Braxton Hicks.
Chilina's literally a beast. Like, she can do anything. And the fact that she's like raising a kid and starring in a Broadway show, and then on her day off, she's flying to Canada to do a concert and fly back. Like, it doesn't surprise me that you were 9 months pregnant. You're like, I'm just gonna book this big Broadway show.
Well, and when you booked it, you had a 5-month-old, and Carol has a 5-month-old during a portion of the show.
Yes.
So I feel like just probably helped you get into character.
It was crazy. Well, I was literally at home with my 5-month-old going, "Oh my God, this is so crazy." And then I went to work and with my 5-month-old in the same scene.
Did you ever try to sneak the actual baby instead of the little mannequin?
You know what?
Baby?
I wanted to do that twice, because I also played Mary Poppins in Canada, and I always wanted to have my own baby in the stroller. I thought that would be so funny. And I literally, my son was, I think he was, oh my gosh, he was 6 weeks old, I think, when I did that show. So I was, breastfeeding, on breaks and at intermission, and then I would be on stage. Anyway, it's fun.
Can you imagine getting your kid their equity card at 6 weeks old?
Right.
Evan, you've been in the show since last March, so you're about to come up on a year. What was your first introduction to Beautiful? Did you see it on Broadway before you were in it?
No. Yes, I did. I saw it on Broadway because I'm good friends with the girl who plays Cynthia. We did Heather's the musical together, so I went to support her and see my friend on on this Broadway show. And I was like, "This is awesome!" And part of me was like, "I think I could play that part." And then I was filming a movie, and I got an audition for this part the first time that the original Gerry was leaving. So I found out I had the audition. I couldn't get back to New York because I was filming in upstate, but I was still considering trying to figure out a way to get back. And all of a sudden, Jake Epstein walks in, and we're filming a movie together. So that's the guy who played Gerry.
Yeah.
And so I would have been going in for his replacement. I'm like, oh, this is so crazy.
I didn't even know that. I never knew that. The whole time I've been working with him, I did not know that.
Yeah, he played a date of mine in a movie that I did. So I told him, I was like, I think I'm going in on that part. And he's like, oh, that's great, that's awesome. I couldn't go in, and then a couple years passed, and the opportunity came up, and I was living in LA. It's actually insane. I was living in LA, I was planning on being back here. I couldn't fly in and be here for the audition, but my first day back in New York was during the callbacks, and I'd never met the creative team, I never met the casting director. They called me in for the callback, and that was it. I booked it off of just one audition, which is insane. It makes me feel like an asshole, because that's just not, that doesn't happen, and I know I'm really lucky, and it's a great part, and it just feels like the right project at the right time.
Whenever I have someone here who talks about luck, I'm always quick to remind everybody that sure, there's an element of being in the right place at the right time, but you had definitely done the work that got you there.
I did.
And you would not have booked it if you hadn't been prepared.
Well, thank you.
So don't cut yourself short.
I appreciate it.
Give yourself some credit. You earned it.
Well, thank you.
Chilina, you're about to celebrate your 1,000th performance as Carole King. You did it on tour, you did it in Canada, and you're doing it on Broadway. Are you sick of it? Do you get? I mean, these songs are so timeless. I don't think I could ever get sick of them. But 1,000 times, man, that's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. But you know what? I sort of liken it to a yoga practice. And I mean, I practice yoga. I've been practicing for years. And every time you go to the mat, especially when you practice something like Bikram or Moksha, it is basically the same poses over and over again. And you just come back to the mat every day as a different human being with something different to bring to the mat or something different that you need to work through. And I kind of see it the same way. I mean, you approach the show as a different person every day with your different struggles and a different way of looking at it. Even now, after however many years, I'm still, and with new people, Evan's such a great actor, and finding a new way to see a moment or to experience a moment is such a gift for me. And it's what we do anyway, no matter what part you're playing. It's an exercise in listening and making the other person the most important part of your life.
Well, the relationship between Gerry and Carol is rocky, to say the least. It's a roller coaster from when you fall in love when Carol is 16 and they're in college together, to struggling through having a family at a young age, to some infidelities, and then later a divorce. By the way, I'm just assuming that we don't need to worry about spoilers. The show's been on Broadway for 4 years, and this stuff actually happened.
Yeah,
like,
they don't end up together. I'm so
yeah, I mean, I feel like it's actual history, and so we don't need to worry about giving away the ending of the show. Anyway, you guys grow so much and butt heads so much that it's hard to believe that when you're falling in love in that first moment, that just less than 24 hours before you had broken up already. Do you know what I mean? Since you have to do that whole process 8 times a week, how do you get back to a place where you can fall in love with somebody that you have just hours before, like, gone to war with?
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, well, there's like your actor brain and then there's the character brain, and like you're pretty aware of both, right? So as an actor, I just love getting to act with Chilina, and so to me, it's like even when it's those hard scenes afterwards, we're like, oh, that felt really good. That felt like a good moment that we created and that we had, and so getting to just then turn around and do it all over again in the same day, you know, on Saturday and Sunday when we have two shows, it definitely doesn't feel like I have to step back and be like, am I still upset at this woman? I just get like, here we go. I get to fall in love with her and then go through all of this together and then, you know, resolve it at the end.
And acting is a great exercise in staying present, like just staying in this very moment and not worrying about anything else. So even when we have 2 shows or when we're looking at 5 shows, like a 5-show weekend, it can seem so overwhelming that you really have to just go scene by scene. Okay, now I'm 16. Now now we're getting married. Now we're having a baby. Now it's the end of all things. And then, you know, when it's done, and you sort of shake it off and then you start over.
What's your favorite moment on stage, with each other or separately? Do you have a favorite moment in the show?
I do, and I hate sharing it sometimes because I'm always afraid of ruining it. You know, so sometimes when you say the thing that is, you know, that you privately love so much, it kind of, I don't know, it puts pressure around it, but I'll tell you.
Okay.
I will tell you. Oh my God, so much pressure now, so much pressure. But I love the moment where, when I discover the Will You Love Me Tomorrow lyrics on the piano, and that moment when he wakes up and that first, Carol's so in love with him at that moment, and I think the artistry, you know, and the teamwork between them is so strong, and you know, just the combination of that, the work and the art and the love, and then it's in the family home and they've got this baby. It's just so romantic and beautiful, and she's just so crazy about him.
The audience loves that moment too, because she starts to play the notes of this familiar song that I think a lot of people might not know that Carole King wrote.
Yeah.
And
I didn't even know she wrote that when I first started.
and the whole audience goes, oh, like that. Yeah.
Well, sometimes we get
beautiful.
like, oh, we get like a very audible. I mean, not so much anymore because a lot of people know, but you know, especially at the beginning when I first joined the show, people were like, "Oh my God!"
That's definitely one of my favorite parts, is just laying on the, because I'm just laying on the couch pretending to sleep.
You're asleep.
And it's one of those ones where you just sort of relax and you're like listening to the show, and she starts playing and she sounds so great, and instantly you hear the whole audience be transported back to whatever it was in their individual memories that like made them think of where they were when they heard the song. And then I have 2 moments with Chilina that I really love. One is written in the text, and it's just any scene where it needs to get emotional. I love doing it with Chilina because it really does feel like we're navigating our way through the scene, not that we're trying to get to a particular moment or milk a certain moment. And it changes and fluctuates every night, and that's just wonderful. Like the hospital scene, there's no one particular moment, but it's just that entire scene. I love navigating that with you. And then something that I like, moments that we find with different actors on stage that aren't written into the text. So there's a moment when we first meet where I say, I can never remember the lines outside of context, but I'm like, there's some references if you don't understand them. And we look at each other, and it's sort of the first time I take her in as this person I want to know more about. And it's so brief and it's not written in, but it's like the first moment I look at Carol and see her as someone I want to know, not some little 16-year-old. It
And
happens
that's,
really early
well, that's
on.
so interesting too that you say that, because I love that moment too, and that's something that I've never had with any of the other Gerrys. And so that was something, 3 years in, that I discovered with Evan, particularly because of how he and I play that scene together.
Oh, that's so great. I want to talk about the character of Gerry because, first of all,
do it.
he is a character and he's also a real person. And actually the same question will apply to you and the character of Carol, because I'm always curious how you pull from your own experience, from the words on the page, and from the actual history of the real life person, and how those three elements combine to create the characters. So first I'm going to ask you about that, and then I want to get into some of the Gerry controversy, because I think that I'm a little more on Team Gerry than most people are.
You're the only one I've heard say that, and I'm with you. So
I mean,
like,
look,
I can't wait.
I'm ultimately on Team Carol, but I give Gerry more credit than I think a lot of people do.
Thank you.
So
She's
I
on the
wanted-
poster, so
I wanna-
you have to be Team Carol.
I'm with you. I agree. Anyway.
So can you address the issue of digging into the real life person and their history and bringing that to the role versus just going off of what the playwright has written versus digging into your own personal history to find the emotional moments that allow you to bring the truth to the moment?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, you can only ever play what's on the page, right? That's all you can do, and what's happening in the moment with your scene partner. And I always talk about it. I mean, I've said this probably a million times, but I kind of love it because it's true for me that it's sort of like the rainbow of personality, right? Like if I'm a red and if Carol's a yellow, then my version of Carol is probably going to be like an orange somewhere in there. Some days it's going to be a little closer to red, some days it's going to be a little closer to yellow, but I think we have a responsibility, especially because, she's still alive and a lot of people know her, and especially in this country and in North America, people have a sense of ownership over those memories, like they lived that time and they feel like they know her really well. So I have a responsibility to do that justice and to try to be as close to her as possible without it being like a caricature or a Saturday Night Live impression. I want it to be something that people can relate to and that seems similar to her in a true way, and that it has to move through me as Chilina. So that's, it's always going to be a little different, from day to day. But I think it's important to try to be to embody the characteristics that make her who she is. And for me, that's a few things that are very, very strong. That when I look at her, I go, oh, that's a Carolism, or that's what she does, or that's how she sounds, or that's how she approaches people or situations.
Do you, in terms of your personal history versus her history, if Carol the character is talking about a loss, do you think about the loss you know of in Carol's life, or do you go to a place where you're accessing like a private pain?
It's so interesting because that's a really good question. That's something that we debate a lot in the acting world, and I've always been taught that you never go to personal experiences, that you always keep it in the moment and about the other person. But of course, when you're having a feeling or you're going through pain, your sense memory will go back to something that you're familiar with, because that's just who we are. We're people, right? So I go back to my own divorce or my own loss. And, I don't know. I think it's hard. It's tricky. It's different for everybody.
How about you?
Well, Gerry is more behind the scenes than Carol ended up being, so there wasn't as much for me to like go off of. And honestly, I was just trying to book a job, right? I got the audition material, and I was like, I've got 5 days to memorize, which was a luxury because you don't usually get 5 days. So I was basing it off of what's written on the text, or what's in the text, because that's really all you have. And then watching the previous guys who had done it, I was able to find some bootlegs. Sorry, they're out there. And like notice the arc that they took and the choices that they made. And then layering in my own truth to that. Like I would rather go in and bring my version of it, than just like a carbon copy. But that definitely influenced it. And then once I booked the job, I tried to read up a little more. But honestly, it was like, well, now I'm just going with what's on the page and what's written here and the little bit of information I know about him.
Like the fact that he has a Queen's accent.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys both have little dialects that are different from your real life voices.
Yeah. And they were like, not like Grease, like don't go crazy accent, but like just a little bit. But yeah, and then like the emotional stuff, it's really interesting. I mean, you study acting and you get the chance to do shows, hopefully for more than a couple of days, but in school it's like a couple of days, and maybe in a real production it's like a month or 2 months, but being able to do it every night, I've realized that I actually do rely more on my own history than I had in the past to try and keep things fresh. I've realized that, and it doesn't have to be like I'm sitting here disconnected from Chilina in any way, but like in the hospital scene and laying in the bed and the feeling of those sheets, and I, can remember a breakup I had that was in bed, and the feeling of those sheets. And for whatever reason, that little moment, if I think about it when I don't feel like I'm in the moment, it kind of brings me to a place that then I can connect with her. Which has been something I've only discovered over a long run, where you get a chance at it every night, and you're like, what works tonight? Oh, that didn't work. Well, what if I try this? What if I think about this? What if I just... And 9 times out of 10, the secret is to just actually look at the person who's in front of you, because most of the time when you're on stage, you can catch yourself not actually taking that person in, and it's a pretty powerful thing when you just look in someone's eyes. And
that's a really good tool. That's a good tool for me too, because when in doubt, you can always look at the person, smell them, feel them, see what they're wearing. Do you know what I mean? Feel your own body. Like my coach always used to tell me, be in your feet, feel your feet. And I was like, what does that mean? But I mean, really, if you just literally, be in your feet, then you're present, and you can't help but be anywhere but here.
Oh, I like that. Okay, so let's talk about Gerry. There's a moment where he comes to Carol and says, listen, we got married when we were 16.
yes!
I don't really know what else is out there for me. I love you. You're my partner. I want to have a family with you always. But I feel like there are other things out there I'd like to explore. And the audience goes, oh, no, he didn't. Like, what is going on? People are mad. People are upset. And I'm like, this is a beautiful, genuine, honest moment.
Thank
you. He did not go like betray her. He sat down, explained his needs, asked her thoughts on it, and to me that doesn't seem like a betrayal. It seems like an honest, beautiful moment of partnership.
I'm so glad we're talking about this.
Me
because
too.
I agree. I mean,
well, and so did Carol to an
but
extent, right? Like
yes,
the realities of a relationship are complex, and when you put them on stage or in a movie, suddenly it's really easy to project certain values and views and be like, "That's terrible." But clearly, they had an intimate enough relationship that they were able to try and navigate an open relationship.
Yeah.
Back in a time when that was not a thing you ever even...
It's super evolved. And Carol was
Absolutely.
like, you know what? If this will allow our marriage to survive, I will give you that permission. And granted, Gerry goes off and does things outside of that agreement that they make. But I think there's not enough conversation about...
But that's it. When he does do that, though, the betrayal is in the lying about it, right? That's the thing that she's so upset. Always lying, always letting someone down has to do with the fact that they weren't honest about it. But in that moment, he is being really actually quite honest. And I think if more people were like that, maybe there would be some, maybe there'd be some more better relationships.
Yeah, I mean, maybe don't say it in the middle of a recording session with
maybe
your
not.
wife.
Yeah, his timing was off. His timing was bad.
But
But I do think, if you look at the facts, right? They were a couple that got married at 16 and had a baby at a time when what you could imagine your life to be was married and have a kid. Then they were at the center of rock and roll, sex, drugs, and rock and roll in a committed relationship with children at a time when sexuality was being explored. Of course Gerry would want, and hopefully, Carol maybe, of course Gerry wanted to explore what that was. And I think Carol is probably just a naturally monogamous human being, and that didn't really appeal to her, and therefore they were incompatible as they grew up and, realized that they were just incompatible in that way. Plus, he has a lot of addiction problems.
right.
But also, too, I have to say, when Carol came to see the show and she hung out with us and she was telling stories afterwards, the way that she speaks about Gerry is so generous. And there was obviously so much love between them over the whole, the course of their whole life together and their careers. And she wears his ashes around her neck.
Oh my gosh.
They were so good to each other, even though there was, they had their problems. What couple doesn't have their problems? I think the fact that they're honest about it and that they continue to support each other is a really beautiful thing. I find it inspiring.
Yeah. Can you talk about the moment that Carol came? I know that she emailed you when you got the part and was like, do you want to know when I'm coming to see the show?
Oh, God, it was terrifying. I saw a message in my inbox from Carol Dash, and I was like, oh, my God, I don't need friends named. Oh, my God, it's Carole King. I lost my mind. And she's like, hey, I hear you're great in the show. I'm going to come see it. Do you want to know when I'm coming? And I replied, dear Miss King, please do not tell me when you are coming, because I'll lose my mind.
I love how you get an email. I got a tweet.
From Carol?
Carol tweeted me, and it was the highlight of my life. but I definitely didn't get an email.
I think some people might prefer the tweet because that's high visibility.
That's true. That is true.
You know, the email is private, but you know, you don't get all the extra followers.
That is true. I did get some followers.
It's funny because but Scott, who was playing Gerry at the time, was every time there was any kind of commotion in the audience, he was like, "Carol's here." And I would lose.
He'd say that to you on stage.
Yes.
Oh my
He'd find
God.
as many ways to
And you were
freak
like,
me out as
"Get
possible.
back in my feet, Chilina."
Yes, back. Where are your feet? Where are your feet?
There have been one or two times I'm looking out of the audience and I see a woman with like large blonde hair, and I'm like, Carol? Is that, is
But
that
when
Carole
she
King?
did come, didn't she wear like a dark bob wig?
With glasses.
Well,
With
why
glasses.
would who wears? Wait, were they glasses or sunglasses?
No, they were like yours, but
Oh,
like
got
black
it.
and
Because I was
round.
picturing her in dark glasses, and I was like, "That's a giveaway on its
So-
own."
super incognito.
It's either Carol or Anna Wintour. Like, yeah. but I think, but didn't she like? I heard you tell a story once where you said she avoided eye contact, and you thought maybe it was because she didn't like you.
I thought she hated me at first, you know, because you're so. I mean, it's such a personal thing, right, and so intimate. And then she came backstage. It was in front of everybody, and she, you know, she started off with some comments for everybody, and she looked at everybody but me, and I was like, oh God, she didn't like what I did, or I disappointed her in some way. And then when she was finished making her comments, she locked eyes with me, and she started to cry. And then we just spent the next sort of few minutes just holding each other, and she was crying into my shoulder. It was like one of the most beautiful moments of, you know, my whole career. I mean, probably the most beautiful moment of my whole career.
So Carol approves.
Yes, and the way she spoke of Gerry too. I just want to tell one
Yeah.
little story because it was so sweet. Because she was doing, like, later on we were asking her questions, and she was, you know, telling old stories about, you know, all the people in the show, and she was discussing, like, telling us how Gerry and her worked together, and how he was basically tone deaf, and he would sit at the piano and he'd be like, oh, and he had a really thick accent, and he was like, when this old world starts getting me down, and she'd be like, when da 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 da, and he was like, that's it, and she would figure out a melody from that, you know. It was like,
I'm glad that you don't play him
I
that
know,
way
like,
because
maybe
it would
we
make
sing
for
it
a
that
really
way.
bad musical. We are going to have a performance of the classic song on Broadway from the Drifters from the show. They're going to come out in a little bit. We're going to take a couple of questions from the audience first, though.
awesome.
Hello. I wanted to know if you both were the real Carol and Gerry. Would you have made some of the life decisions they made?
Oh, that's a good.
That is a big one.
I mean, like now in 2018, back then?
I would say in terms of the way that Carol is so generous and so forgiving, I mean, yes, I would love to think that I would, in that position, I would make that same choice, or that I would be as loving and forgiving as she has been. I mean, I think that's a great quality, and I hope to embody that. I try.
Yeah, I think I would have made the same. What's written on the in the play, right? If I look at what the choices he made, I think he attempted to have as much integrity in the choices that he made, even though they hurt the person that he loved. I feel like his heart was in the right place. And then with mental issues and substance abuse issues, it was just a time in which they didn't handle it in the same way that we do now. So it's even hard to say, like, I wish he had been able to get the help that he needed earlier, so that maybe he didn't disrupt his family life so much, you know?
Yeah, but if he hadn't disrupted his family life, would we ever have had Tapestry? I mean,
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Well, and also, I think, too, in terms of the art, that's the other thing. I think that they were so ballsy, just the two of them, how they worked separately and also together, just the cutting edge and the way that they were so unafraid. Like, she just marched into Donnie Kirshner's office when she was 16. She's like, here, I have a song. I mean, that is so bold. I really respect both of them for just the legacy that they left us.
your theater is just like steps away from 1650 Broadway, where the play takes place.
Yeah.
Do you ever walk by that building and go, whoa? That it was there.
I haven't
right
noticed
there.
it. I need to walk by. I know it's there, but I never figured out which one it was. I do see the Brill building because
Yeah.
and it's referenced. And I remember walking by and just being like, "This, like, we live in New York City. The history in New York City is just so cool."
Oh, you have to go over to 1650.
yeah, now I have to.
Yeah. Let's take one more question.
Hey, I was just wondering, is there anything that you guys do before, like, every performance? Like, any rituals or anything like that?
Pre-show rituals?
I listen to Tapestry. Ooh, big surprise. But I do that, and I listen to her. She's got a really great Legendary Demos album, which is her at a very young age just doing all of those classic demos like Natural Woman. And I love listening to that. It puts me in the right vocal place for the show and makes me think about all the songs that aren't in the show, you know, that are important. And I do a lot of breathing and some yoga and some stretching and just getting into my own body, into my feet.
How about you?
I drink a lot of coffee. That's my like ritual. No, I do that, but I don't have anything particularly for this show, but in shows in general, before opening night or whenever I'm like making my thing, I always go behind the screen or the curtain, or in this case, we don't really have one, so it's like the passageway in the back, and just sort of listen to the audience. I don't know why I find that really calming and not terrifying. It's kind of terrifying. I guess it's like jumping, you know, walking up to the airplane and like, you're about to jump. But I don't know why I find that really calming and sort of connecting. And it's like, okay, that's the energy and the people that we're going to be doing this for. And I've just always done that ever since I was in middle school. It was something my teachers had us do.
The audiences are so in love with every moment of this show. I think my theory, everybody's singing along. And there are a couple of people who are like, shh. But for the most part, everyone's in on it like it's a sing-along concert. And my theory is that these are all the songs that everybody listens to when they're driving. And so they're like car songs, and that's where everybody belts it out. So when you hear a song like On Broadway, which we're just about to see a live performance of, you automatically start singing without even thinking about it. And the joy in that theater, both on stage and in the crowd, is really palpable. I'm excited that we're going to bring a little bit of it right here to the Build stage. So we're going to take a little break,
guys.
reset the stage, and then bring on the Drifters. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. You're amazing.